Everybody has been in a similar situation, circumstance in which we believe we're being utilized or exploited frequently without even recognizing that it's gradual and subtle. It may cause you to feel exhausted, influenced or underappreciated. But here's the harsh reality. Individuals will exploit you if you. Letting stuff go teaches us to set boundaries, safeguard our tranquility, and keep our emotions under control and choices. Identifying when someone is exploiting you is the initial action to take back control and make sure that you spend time and effort on. In this video, we'll prudently examine 10 faint indications that someone might be taking benefit of utilizing the timeless Stoic wisdom to direct our path. These aren't just any old red signals, are behavioral patterns that, if ignored, it might weaken your self-esteem and make you feel helpless. But fear not. We're not intending to keep you hanging with, "I'll demonstrate how to recognize these indicators," how the Stoic school of thought might aid in your recovery, your ability to set limits and defend your inner tranquility. Therefore, if you've ever had that persistent sense that something's off in a professional connection, or whether you're in the correct place, buddy, time to stand back and observe things for the truth about them and take back your power. Let's examine the 10 indicators you perhaps being exploited. Since you can identify the issue, you are able to fix. They make you feel bad, which is a sign. For failing to mention one of the most obvious signs that you're being taken advantage of is when they continuously evoke feelings of feeling bad for establishing limits you refuse, and they act as though you've done something. There seems to be a problem with your refusal. This guilt is a personal assault on them. Trip is how they try to manipulate you, making sure you comply with their wishes, even when it's not what's best for you. Let's face it, saying no is not illegal. Actually, it's an essential ability that Stoics. We learned from Marcus Aurelius that we need to safeguard our time and effort. As if that were gold, you would feel bad about defending your personal limits. You're letting another person determine how you live your life. They are exploiting you, of your generosity, your terror of conflict, or even your sense of obligation. I've been there all the time myself, accepting things in order to avoid dispute. But the worst part is that the more people you say yes out of guilt will anticipate it, as it's a vicious loop that only comes to an end when you maintain your choice to safeguard your time. Stoicism teaches us to maintain our composure and reason. Even when people attempt to control us, remind yourself that you have the right to feel this way. To refuse without feeling bad about it if someone is unable to accept your no, which is a representation of their personality rather than yours. Nobody needs an explanation from you, more than you are comfortable providing. The next time guilt-baiting is attempted, lead you to do something that you shouldn't. All right? Take a moment to consider whether this behavior that is consistent with your values and well-being. If the guilt is not released and ultimately maintain your position, it's not about pleasing other people, but rather about honoring oneself. Sign 2, and they only contact them if they ever need anything. Observe that some individuals simply get in touch with, you are the person they turn to when they need a favor. Those who show up out of the blue requesting anything, but when you're the one in need, but they're not present today, is a well-known indicator of being taken. These people's advantages are transactional. They see your partnership is a tool, not a destination. Sincere bonding in Stoic thought relationships are based on reciprocal honor, and Epica's theory of reciprocity taught us that we should respect those who separate from and value the US people who don't put forth the same amount of effort as the partnership. If you feel someone is there only to take, and they never to allow it time to reconsider its role that I've had in your life, friendships that I was unaware of for years, during which I was exposed to the pattern, was consistently in need of assistance. help on relocating for a job, or emotional assistance in trying times. But when I tried to grab anything, they were unexpectedly unavailable or too busy to. It took me a while to realize that this wasn't only a chance. It was a dynamic's one-sidedness was draining my exerting effort and receiving little compensation. According to the Stoics, we should let go of such connections that they don't support your development or well-being, cherish those they respect you, and don't hesitate to keep your distance from those who only consider you a resource. The crucial element here is relationships of reciprocity ought to be a reciprocal relationship, and when they're not, you remember that you have the right to leave. You have limited time and energy, so don't squander them on individuals who simply appear, when it's practical, for they don't respect you when you sign 3. Time is another unobtrusive but dangerous indication that you're being taken advantage of is when they consistently ignore your. Perhaps they arrive late for meetings, frequently postpone or pile up, adding last-minute duties to your workload without taking into account your schedule. This behavior tells you that they don't appreciate you as much of their personal time as the. According to Stoics, one of our greatest Seneca's rich resources are among the finest Stoic thinkers frequently spoke regarding the significance of overseeing our prudently used time when someone consistently squanders your time. They are basically depriving you of moments by stealing. You may spend money on important things. I have personally encountered this in both private and professional contexts. It's annoying to think that your time isn't appreciated, particularly after you've made an endeavor to arrive on time, be ready, or adaptable. But the reality is that the more you let folks off the hook for this, the more they'll keep doing it. They'll learn to anticipate that your stoicism, theirs to waste, tells us to establish limits without getting upset or sentimental. You don't need to enter a heated dispute. Simply state your anticipations. If someone maintains disregarding your time, begin restricting who you are available to. Give up shifting your schedule to fulfill their impromptu requests. As soon as you prove that your time is, people who value it will either respect it or else they will disappear, and either way is preferable to being ignored. The following time someone arrives late or cancels without providing a valid reason, be aware that it's more than simply a hassle. It's a warning sign that they disregard your time, and in the event that they disregard your, most likely, they don't respect you. Either establish your limits or don't regret imposing them on you. Deserve to be treated with the same respect as much as anybody. They always play the other person's sign. 4. Victim in one of the sneakiest ways people exploit and manipulate. You're always playing the victim. These are the people who consistently always find themselves in a sub-story in the midst of misfortune and constantly appear to place the responsibility elsewhere. Otherwise, they employ their alleged unfortunate events can arouse pity, making you feel forced to assist them or sorry about it. Even if their issues are frequently, the Stoics believed in self-harm. Assuming personal accountability for one's life. According to Marcus Aurelius, we are in authority over our responses to life's difficulties, and we are accountable for them. To take responsibility for our choices and actions when someone constantly stays away from responsibility and how they present themselves, the defenseless victim is not just avoiding accountability, they're also using your compassion. I've met those who, regardless of the circumstance, manage to create themselves. They would twist the victim, conditions to provide the impression that the world was against them, but in practice, their bad luck was frequently caused by their own decisions. The fact that they weren't evident curious about the answers they simply desired. Someone to save them so they can continue to give. Without a doubt, this type of overtime manipulation can become draining. Your emotional energy is depleted and you leave. You feel accountable for their well-being, The Stoic reaction acknowledges this pattern for what it is: manipulation. You can still be sympathetic without being a lifelong savior, provides assistance, but forbids. Allow yourself to get drawn into their limitless cycle of victimhood. Keep in mind that genuine Stoic wisdom is about assisting others in becoming self-sufficient, not permitting their defenselessness your feelings by understanding when to step. They utilize guilt as a backsign. 5. Weapon guilt is an effective instrument in the hands of someone who wants to control and exploit you. These people are perfectly capable of making you feel terrible about stating boundaries, no, or putting your own needs first. Things like, "I thought we," will be said, "we're pals," or "I've done a lot for." You are transforming each encounter into an emotional exchange intended to make you owe the Stoics a duty of gratitude. Recognize the risks of letting feelings such as guilt control your behavior. Epictetus advocated for us to be governed by rationality rather than sentiment. When someone uses guilt to manipulate you, they're alluring to your feelings in an attempt to avoid your logical assessment. It's a dishonest method of coercing you into conformity, and if you're not cautious, it can result in an ongoing cycle of going above and above to avoid feeling bad about having people in my life who was skilled in using guilt. They would remind me in order to get an advantage of favors they previously performed, bring them up as soon as possible. Favorable moments, typically when they wanted something small in exchange. But long-lasting, I discovered myself performing tasks that I didn't want to. In order to escape the burden of shame, they were teaching me how to be stoic. This is obvious. Don't let guilt get in the way. Determine your choices and know when a weapon of guilt is being used by someone, and keep in mind that you are not accountable for their feelings or their expectations, that you are in charge of own behavior. As long as you're behaving in accordance with your principles, you stay with nothing to feel bad about, based on your values, and decline to allow the use of guilt as a way to sign 6 of manipulation. They ignore you sentiments. When someone regularly minimizes or rejects your sentiments, your worries, which is a clear indication that they're exploiting you. If you're angry at the way they've handled you, or you're just saying a private matter, they dismiss it, provide justifications, or perhaps give you the impression that you're being too sensitive about this. Emotional denial and its evident indicate that they don't value your feelings, or your Stoic boundaries tells us not to let other people to control our emotions, but that doesn't imply that we ought to let people deny our feelings. Marcus Aurelius promoted self-reflection and awareness, telling us that even though we have influence over our responses, we should also safeguard our emotional and mental health. When someone rejects your emotions, they're basically informing you that your emotions are irrelevant, and that's unacceptable. Circumstances I've encountered where I've conveyed pain or discomfort only to receive answers such as, "It's not that big," or "You're overreacting," of a bargain. This type of dismissal eventually made me distrust and question my own emotions, if I was entitled to feel the way I did. But Stoicism serves as a reminder that despite what some people may think, feelings are real. Recognize them. The Stoic remedy is to coolly demand your entitlement to experience the "don't let someone else's" manner of doing. Disregarding your feelings compels you to, if someone is unable to respect them, quiet them. Your emotions serve as a mirror of their personality, not yours. Safeguards your emotional health through distance yourself from people who don't want to recognize your feelings. You possess the freedom to communicate your feelings and your merit to be. When you hear the sign 7, you feel one of the most subtle yet incompetent harmful methods that someone can exploit of you by giving you a sense of incapacity. Or unable, they will covertly undercut your skills, sow doubtful seeds in your thoughts, or consistently place themselves considered more competent or informed. This method of manipulation that erodes your confidence over time resulting in you believe that their success is essential to yours, or simply to get by in daily life. This kind of action is pernicious, since it's frequently passed off as worry or being helpful. They could say things like, "Do you really think you can manage it?" Or "I'll do it for you." I'm aware that complex over time, you begin to absorb these uncertainties and second-guess yourself, depending more on them. And however, the Stoics were more resolute. Those who value independence and inner epicus of strength preached that external opinions and events are outside of our control, but our reactions are as follows: that when someone makes an effort to, it is your responsibility to identify incompetence, the deception, and make your own skills. I've come across individuals who made me feel inadequate in a subtle way, sufficient at anything, whether it was an undertaking at work or even overseeing my personal lives. They would give, without being asked, guidance or make an effort to assist in ways that left how I feel unable. But after I realized this, I discovered how to trust my own pattern, skills, and ceased permitting their uncertainties to affect my choices to counteract this manipulation. Keep in mind that you are able to managing your own life, and the Stoic concept is embraced by duties of self-sufficient, meaning you don't require assistance, someone else's approval to determine your value or competence. Maintain your self-confidence in your skills and avoid letting anyone make you feel less than you are. Signs 8 that they consistently ignore, displaying one of the most lucid sign minds that you're being taken advantage of, is if they constantly steal from you, regardless of your time, energy, or resources or consolation, without ever connections that are reciprocal. Whether professional or personal involvement should be some kind of reciprocal trade. If someone takes from you all the time and never gives anything in exchange, it's a warning sign. This type of conduct can be subtle. Initially, they might request a modest favors or anticipate that you'll always be ready to hear about their issues. However, it eventually becomes biased against you. Feel exhausted while they maintain the advantages of the Stoic method to relationships places a focus on harmony, and Marcus Aurelius believed in honesty, giving back to the community, but he also recognized the need to safeguard us from becoming exhausted by those who are solely interested in taking my pals, who appear to call only when necessary something, whether it was guidance, financial assistance, or even emotional support, but they were nowhere to be found when I needed them. It took some time to find me, but I ultimately realized that their relationships were exhausting me, encouraging me to deal with this beginning. You have every right to set boundaries, to refuse when someone is taking you benefit of a genuine friendship, regardless if it's with family, friends, or co-workers, or to entail giving and receiving if someone refuses to make an investment in the it is time to re-evaluate the relationship. Their function in your life to safeguard your vitality by encircling oneself with those that value you and your contributions. Sign 9, which they falsify. The phrase "you with flattery" is frequently used as a means of control, while the use of compliments is normal and beneficial in interactions that are overly strategic. Or a warning sign for manipulators is flat flattery. Frequently flatter you to make you feel better or to persuade you to take actions you otherwise be reluctant to do so, because they'll know what you'd like to hear, exaggerate your ego, and make you feel unique at the same time, gently guiding you in the direction of their agenda, against which the Stoics cautioned, permitting Cloud to receive compliments or criticism. Epictetus serves as a reminder of our judgment. We need to be unaffected by outside, whether it's praise or blame, validation. A cunning person is aware that flattery can be. They'll utilize it to keep you hooked. But a Stoic person understands that self-worth originates internally, not from the views of other people. I've encountered circumstances in which I would be showered with compliments, but then to follow it up with a ask for a favor or assistance of some kind. Receiving accolades felt fantastic at first, but as time went on, I discovered that their compliments were used as a manipulative tactic. Instead of being authentic gratitude to offset this and keep a detached stoicism from flattery, doesn't allow it to boost your self-esteem or cloud your. Always consider the motivations before making decisions behind too glowing remarks, and don't let it to affect your choices. It's true, admiration and respect originate from sincere behaviors, not resulting from deceptive flattery intended to regulate your conduct based on your own value as a worker. And avoid being influenced by kind statements that serve the needs of others. They make you feel bad, which is agenda sign 10, stating that none of the most. One of the manipulative strategies one can employ is you're being guilt-tripped for saying no to this. The sign is modest, yet quite potent. Since it appeals to your innate yearning to be helpful and kind, they'll frame. Your rejection is a transgression that makes you have the impression that you're working on something incorrect by establishing limits using terms like, "after everything I've done for you," or "I'm unable to, that you would harm me in this way," are traditional expressions that evoke feelings of remorse, intended to force you to adopt a Stoic attitude, instructs us to behave in a way that aligns with our own principles and not to be influenced by sentimental. Marcus Aurelius frequently manipulates thought about how crucial it is to staying loyal to one's values. In spite of how people respond when someone tries to victimize you, they're trying to regulate your feelings so that you behave contrary to your personal interests. But as a Stoic, you have to learn to see this. Strategy and keep your cool. I've been in circumstances when someone forced me to feel bad about putting my own needs first requirements, whether it was a social invitation or declining to accept further work. They distort my choice into something self-serving, but eventually I discovered that refusing isn't about being self-centered. It's about safeguarding my vitality and health. The more I less time spent practicing establishing limits, I was impacted by their guilt trip. The secret to defeating this strategy is to remain steadfast in your decision. Their emotions, without taking you, are not accountable for them. Required to accept everything, and preserving your time and emotional well-being is essential. Avoid being manipulated by others. Are you overcommitting? Saying no and surrendering your boundaries is a self-respecting act, and nobody ought to make you feel bad about respecting. The truth is, manipulation for your own needs can be imperceptible and subtle, but it's critical to identify these indicators prior to them having an opportunity to undermine your assurance and well-being. According to the Stoics, we possess authority over our reactions to people, especially when we are powerless over their acts, by remaining rooted in your ideals and upholding distinct boundaries. You can defend yourself against people who try to profit from your generosity, or remember that vulnerabilities aren't about transforming those around you. It's about managing your own responses and avoiding letting other people control. Your feelings are where the power is. To remain focused, conscious and purposeful in the way you engage with the outside world. Thus, if have you observed any of these indicators in your connections, don't be scared to re-evaluate and act, regardless of whether it's establishing limits, leaving, or when you challenge manipulative behavior. Your peace of mind and happiness are valuable. Safeguarding, as the Stoics taught, power originates internally, and it is up to you to make sure nobody else has remain in charge of your life or feeling strong. Maintain your composure and regain control.